All right, guys, it's Wednesday. Today, you guys are basically going to be continuing working on the Pixton that you guys should have started, right? Remember, the Pixton, which is this, right, is going to be you focused on the short story that we read last week, The Pedestrian. If you need to go reread that story over, you can go do that. Okay, your focus is on looking at the 6 different parts of a dystopia, right? So if we kind of review, remember there are 6 parts to it. The first one was about uniformity and sameness. That there's like basically things stay the same or uniform amongst characters in the story. It could be the people, could be the houses, lifestyles, all kinds of things are the same. There's also no free will, which means people can't make their own choices. There is also either a corrupt government and propaganda attached to it. Okay. There's also segregation and unequal power, so people are separated without power. You also have a secret of sorts that's usually some sort of evil thing. And then the last part is the fact that there's somebody who's a hero who's unexpected. Okay, so these 6 elements are going to be used using the short story Pedestrian, and you're basically going to make a panel for each one, right? So if you look here on the bottom, right, each one has the title on the top for what type of dystopia it is. It also has the picture that represents the scene, and then you have to write a little bit about what actually happened in the story that kind of supports that idea. Okay, so this is what you have to do first. After you're done with that, we're going to do a little bit of reading, and I'm going to have some questions for you guys on Socrative. Okay, all right. So, kind of a little review. First 2 chapters, you had Luke, and you're kind of figuring out that Luke is not allowed to be seen. Okay, he's not allowed to even exist. So you have that basically being told. So you find out in that first chapter that there's trees that are by his house that are going to be knocked down to be building houses. And the fact that those trees are gone, he can no longer be in his backyard. All right, we're continuing. Chapter 3. Luke lay on his stomach on the floor and idly ran the toy train back and forth on the track. The train had belonged to Dad when he was a little boy, and his own father before him. Luke could remember a time when his greatest longing had been for Mark to outgrow the train so that Luke could have it all to himself. But it wasn't what he wanted to play with today. There was a beautiful day unfolding outside, with fleecy clouds and blue sky, and a mild breeze rustling the grass in the backyard. He hadn't left the house in a week now, and he could almost hear the outdoors calling to him. That's an example of personification here. But now, he wasn't even allowed in the same room as an uncovered window. Are you trying to be discovered? Dad had bellowed at Luke just that morning, when he held the shade a few inches back from the kitchen window and peeked out longingly. Luke jumped. He'd been so busy thinking about running barefoot through the grass that he'd half forgotten there was anyone or anything behind him in the house. No one's out there, he said, glancing in to be sure. He'd been trying not to look beyond the ragged edge of the backyard to the bulldozed mess of branches, trunks, leaves, and mud that had once been his beloved woods. Yeah, Dad said. Did it ever occur to you that if there is, they might see you before you see them? He grabbed Luke by the arm and he jerked him back a good 3 feet. Freed from Luke's grasp, the bottom of the shade banged against the windowsill. You can't look out at all, Dad said. I mean it. From now on, just stay away from the windows. Don't go into a room unless we got the shades or curtains pulled. But then I can't see anything, Luke protested. Better that than getting turned in, Dad said. Dad sounded like he might feel sorry for Luke, but they only made things worse. Luke turned around and left scared he might cry in front of his dad. Now he gave the toy train a shove, and it careened off the track. It landed upside down, wheels spinning. Who cares? Luke muttered. There was a harsh knock on his door. Population police, open up! Luke didn't move. It's not funny, Mark, he shouted. Mark opened the door and he bounded up the stairs that led to Luke's room proper. Luke's room was also the attic, a fact he never minded. Mother, long ago, had shoved all the trunks and boxes as far as they could go under the eaves, leaving prime space for Luke's brass bed and a circular rag rug and books and toys. Luke had even heard Matthew and Mark grumble about Luke having the biggest room, but they had windows. Scared you this time, didn't I? Mark asked. No, Luke said. Nothing would force him to admit that his heart had jumped. Mark had been playing the population joke for years, always out of their parents' earshot. Usually Luke just ignored Mark, but now, with Dad acting so skittish, what would Luke have done if it really had been the population police? What would they do to him? Matt and me, we never told anyone about you, Mark said, suddenly serious, which was strange for him. You know Mother and Dad don't say anything. You're good at hiding, so you're safe, you know? I know, Luke muttered. Mark kicked the toy train Luke had crashed. You still playing with these baby toys? He asked, as if to make up for slipping and being nice. Luke shrugged. Normally, he wouldn't have wanted Mark to know he played with trains anymore, but today, everything else was so bad it didn't matter. Did you come up here just to bug me? Luke asked. Mark put on an offended look. Hey, I thought you might want to play checkers, he said. Luke squinted. Mother told you to, right? He asked. No. You're lying, Luke said, not caring how nasty he sounded. Well, if you're going to be that way, just leave me alone, okay? Okay, Mark backed down. Stairs. Jeez. Alone again, Luke felt a little sorry he'd been so mean. Maybe Mark had told the truth. Luke should apologize, but he didn't really feel like it. Luke got up and he started pacing his room. The squeak of the third board in the stairs annoyed him. He hated having stuck under the rafters on the far side of his bed. Even his favorite model cars lined up the shelves in this corner bothered him today. Why should he have model cars? He never even sat in a real one. He never would. He'd never do anything or go anywhere. He might as well just rot up here in the attic. He thought about that before on the rare occasions when Mother, Dad, Matthew, and Mark all went somewhere and left him behind. What if something happened to them and they never came back? Would someone find him years from now, abandoned and dead? He'd read a story in one of the old books in the attic about a bunch of kids finding a deserted pirate ship, then a skeleton in one of the rooms. He'd be like that skeleton. Now that he wasn't allowed in the rooms with uncovered windows, he'd be a skeleton in the dark. Luke looked up automatically, as if to remind himself that nothing lit the rafters but the single bulb over his head. Except there was a light at either end of the ceiling, leaking in under the peak of the roof. Luke stood up and he went to investigate. Of course, he should have remembered. There were vents at each end of the roof. Dad grumbled occasionally about the heating for attic, and Luke, it's just like throwing money out of those vents. But Mother always fixed them with one of her stairs, and nothing changed. Now Luke climbed up onto one of the largest trunks and he looked down through the vent. He could see out. He could see a strip of road in the cornfield beyond, its leaves waving in the breeze. The vent slammed down and limited his view, but at least he was sure nobody would ever be able to see him. For a moment, Luke was excited, but that quickly faded. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life watching corn grow. Without much hope, he stepped down from the trunk and then he went to the other end of the attic, the portion that faced the backyard. He had to slide boxes around and drag an old step stool from the opposite end of the attic, but finally his eyes were level with the back vent. The view wasn't of the backyard, it was too close, but of the former woods. He'd never realized it before, but the land there sloped away from his family's house, so he had a clear view of acres and acres that had once been covered with trees. The land was abuzz with activity now. Huge yellow bulldozers shoved brush back from a rough road that had been traced out with gravel. Other vehicles Luke couldn't identify were digging holes for huge concrete pipes. Luke watched in fascination. He knew tractors of combines, of course, and seen his dad's bush hog and manure spreader and gravity wagons up close in the barn, but these machines were different, designed for different jobs, and they were all operated by different people. Once, when Luke was younger, a tramp had walked up in the house, and Luke had only had time to hide under the sink in the mudroom before the man was in the house begging for food. The door of the cabinet was cracked, so Luke had been able to peek out and see the man's patched trousers and holey shoes. He'd heard his whiny voice. I ain't got no job and I ain't eaten 3 days. No, I can't do no farm work for my food. What you think I am? Sick? I'm starving. Other than the tramp and the pictures in the books, Luke had never seen another human being besides his parents, Matthew and Mark. He never dreamed there was such variety. Many of the people running the bulldozers and shovel contraptions were stripped of their shirts while others standing nearby even wore ties and coats. Some were fat, some were thin, some were browned by the sun, and some were paler than Luke himself, who would never be tan again. They were all moving, shifting gears, lowering pipe, waving others into position, or at the very least talking at full speed. All that activity made Luke dizzy. The pictures and books always showed people still. Overwhelmed, Luke closed his eyes, and then he opened them again for fear of missing something. Luke! Reluctantly, Luke slid down the steps from his step-stool's perch, and he scrambled over to recline innocently on his bed. Come in, he called to his mother. She climbed the stairs heavily. You okay? Luke dangled his feet over the side of the bed. Sure, I'm fine. Mother sat on the bed beside him and patted his leg. She swallowed hard. It's not easy, this life you got to live. I know you'd like to look outside. You'd like to go outside. That's okay, Mother, Luke said. You could have told her that then about the vents. He didn't see how anyone could object to him looking out there, but something stopped him. What if they took that away from him, too? What if Mother told Dad and Dad said, no, that's too much of a risk, I forbid it. Luke wouldn't be able to stand it. He kept silent. Mother ruffled his hair. You're a trooper, she said. I knew you'd hold up all right. Luke leaned against his mom's arm, and she moved on her arm and his shoulders and hugged him tight to her side. He felt a little guilty for keeping a secret, but mostly reassured, loved and reassured. Then more to herself than to him, Mother added, and things could be worse. Somehow this wasn't comforting. Luke didn't know why, but he had a feeling what she really meant was things were going to get worse. He snuggled tighter against his mother, hoping he was wrong. Chapter 4. Luke found out what Mother meant a few days later when he came down for breakfast. As usual, he opened the door from the back stairs to the kitchen only a crack. He could remember barely a handful of times in his entire life when someone had dropped by before breakfast. Each time, Mother had managed to send Matthew or Mark up to warn Luke to stay out of sight, but he always checked. Today he could see Dad and Matthew and Mark at the table and knew from the sound of frying bacon that Mother must be at the stove. Are the shades closed? He called softly. Mother opened the door to the stairs. Luke started to step into the kitchen, but she put out her arm to keep him back. She handed him a plate full of scrambled eggs and bacon. Luke, honey, can you eat sitting on the bottom step there? What? Luke asked. Mother looked beseechingly over her shoulder. Dad thinks. It's not safe anymore to have you in the kitchen. You can still eat with us and talk to us and all, but you'll be over here. She waved her hand towards the stairs behind Luke. But with the shades pulled, Luke started. One of the workers asked me yesterday, hey, farmer, you got air conditioning in that house of yours? Dad said from the table. He didn't turn around. He didn't seem to want to look at Luke. So if you think about it, why does he not want to look at Luke? He's obviously kind of like upset by what he's going to say. We keep the shades pulled. Hot daylight today. People get suspicious. This way, it's safer. I'm sorry. So what you should be noticing here is Luke can't even go into the kitchen anymore. He has to sit on the steps away from everyone. And then Dad did turn around and he glanced at Luke once. Luke tried to keep from looking upset. So what'd you tell him? Matthew asked, as if the worker's question was only a matter of curiosity. I told him, of course we don't have air conditioning. Farmer don't make me a millionaire. Dad took a long sip of coffee. Okay, Luke? Mother asked. Yeah, he mumbled. He took the plate of eggs and bacon, but it didn't look good to him now. He knew every bite he ate would stick in his throat. He sat down on the step out of sight of both kitchen and windows. We'll leave the door open, Mother said. She hovered over him as if unwilling to return to the stove. This isn't too much different, is it? Mother, Dad said warningly. So obviously the dad doesn't want to change anything. Through the open windows, Luke could hear the rumble of several trucks and cars. The workers had arrived for the day. He knew from watching through the vent the past few days the caravan of vehicles came up the road like a parade. That's a simile. The cars would peel off to the side and unload the nicer dressed men. The more rugged vehicles pulled onto the muddiest sections, and the people inside would scatter to the bulldozers and backhoes that had been left outside overnight. But the vehicles barely had time to get cold because the workers were there now from sunup to sundown. Someone was in a hurry for them to finish. Luke, I'm sorry, Mother said, and scurried back to the stove. She loaded a plate for herself and sat down at the table beside Luke's usual spot. His chair wasn't even in the kitchen anymore. For a while, Luke watched Dad, Mother, Matthew, and Mark eating in silence. A complete family of four. Once, he cleared his throat, ready to protest again. You can't do this, it's not fair. Then he choked these words unspoken. They were only trying to protect him. What could he do? Resolutely, Luke stuck his fork in the pile of scrambled eggs on his plate, and he took a bite. He ate the whole plateful of food without tasting any of it. All right, so again, what you guys are going to do now is you're going to go on to Socrative. Okay, remember it's www.socrative.com, and this is your code 2037AEC7 to get in. Talk to you guys, mañana.